there, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in to Sin's Workshop. I hope you are all having a wonderful day. So, today we are going to be talking about The Cherished by Patricia Ward. Full disclosure, this was a gift from the publisher. They did give me an advanced reader's copy. And while I do thank them for giving me this opportunity to read this book, unfortunately, I was not a fan of the book itself. I think the story is interesting. You know, we're following Jo. She's been given this farmland, and she's been told she has this responsibility. No idea what this responsibility is, but she's like 16, and she's been given this farmland from her estranged grandmother on her father's side. And her father, you know, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of backstory. He suffered with mental illness, schizophrenia, and there is an instance in which he did kidnap his own daughter. As the story evolves, you know that there's a lot more to it, and I really don't want to give it away because it does end up ruining the story, and I don't want to do that. But Jo had a very good relationship with her father despite everything. She really did love her father, and she has a sort of resentment and detachment to her mother and her mother's new husband, who, again, he doesn't seem like a bad guy. He's kind of just there. He seems to care deeply for Jo and her mother. And I think what really bothers me is Jo just calls her unborn half-brother the amiober. Like, she really works so hard to create this barrier between herself and her mother's family. While I can understand that because her mother's family does seem like a bunch of pretentious, rich pricks, you can tell her mother as well is not a fan of her own family. I mean, she ran off and she married a farmer, and she was quite happy as far as the memories are concerned. You know, she really did love Jo's father. She just couldn't handle his mental illness, you know. She was young. I can understand that, and I don't resent her for that as a character. But Jo's very apathetic, and that translates off the page, because as I was reading this, I was not able to connect to her at all. And that was my biggest struggle with the story. Again, it's a very interesting story. There are fairies on this farmland, and they are not nice fairies. They kidnap children, and it's somewhat traumatic what happens with the children. But that's her responsibility to the farm, to keep the fairies at bay. I think her personality, it just doesn't translate well. Even by the end, I feel like there's a lack of passion. There's a lack of emotion when it comes to her characterization. She lacks personality, and that's the thing that's most bothersome. Because by the time I was done reading it, I felt nothing. I was very apathetic. I was just like, okay, I read this book. Didn't really feel anything for it. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I was so indifferent to it that I was just like, whatever. But that's kind of just like how Jo is in the book. You know, she's very, whatever. I felt no personality. There was no warmth. It was very, very cold. So that was really my biggest struggle with this book. Just trying to connect to the characters. And again, the story itself was interesting, which is really why I finished it. I liked the story. I liked the development of the history in the story. And there is some development, I will say this. There is some development between Jo and her mother. You know, they do form a bond. So, I enjoyed that aspect of the story. But ultimately, I was very indifferent to this book. I could tell you everything that happens in the book because I remember it, but it was just not my favorite. I didn't hate it. I just don't feel anything for it. So unfortunately for that, I have to give it 2.5, a soft, very soft 3 out of 5 stars. If you yourself want to check out the book, I will include links in the description below on where to purchase. And on that note, I hope you all will continue to support me here by liking this podcast, subscribing to it, and sharing it with all your book-loving friends. You can also become a supporter on Buy Me a Coffee, Ko-fi, Patreon, on Spotify for podcasters, my recording platform. I will of course include links in the description below. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, happy reading.